Well, I have a good feeling about all this. A very good feeling. This truly is a spectacular find. Evidence that such an old civilization interacted with, well, another civilization during this time? Well, it's certainly very interesting. At least that's what all the other historians and collectors are saying. All I really care about is how much money on the side I can make from all this. Also, it's always fun to find a reason to come to Sweden, get away from home, away from Father's judgmental gaze. Still, something about all this is a little strange. After all, why did it take so long for the original finders to organise the showing of the items? Maybe they wanted to keep it all to themselves, or sell to a private buyer. The whole family is a little strange, to be honest. I do feel sorry for that daughter of theirs. Still, all I know is I'm eager to see the actual artifacts in the flesh. Soon. Very eager indeed. This is Red Moon Roleplaying. I don't suppose you have any etchings of that pattern. That does sound interesting to me. Otherwise, I don't know. It all does sound most peculiar, but it just makes me more interested. Again, a Minotaur without a maze. Bit of a anticlimax, no?
He chuckles at that and continues sipping at his cognac. He gives you some of the photos that he was showing earlier of the grave, so that you can also have a look at what he was describing here.
Oh, wonderful. I do start looking them over. And again, I say, you don't suppose there's any chance there'd be more in the area, do you? I mean, if there was one little tomb, we never know. Maybe there was something else. Or maybe that's a bit wishful thinking.
Well, you never know. It's certainly possible. It's certainly possible, but at the same time, it's such a unique find, isn't it? It feels like we should have found more earlier if this was some kind of, well, large commune of people who had travelled over here.
That reminds me. You said earlier that the items in question have been on hold, though, for some time. Why is that?
Professor? Mr. Crane? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm disturbing your discussion.
No, on the contrary. Do join us, Mr. Ljung. I was just asking, as we asked earlier, why there was the delay in showing of the artifacts.
Yes. Most curious case, this.
Oh, Elise, are you all right? And you hear Anna sort of yelling out.
I feel a hint of annoyance. The girl is once again taking the focus of the scene. And I look over to them.
And you see that Elise looks even more pale and she's slumped down on a chair. Bernardsson has gone to take care of her daughter. And even Wrangel seems worried for her. And somehow his presence doesn't seem to calm anyone there. Anna keeps some distance to Wrangel, you can see. And you know, of course, Anna has told you in confidence that the divorce was difficult and that Wrangel was quite unpleasant towards the end.
I frown a little and sort of hand over the papers I was just looking at to Mr. Ljung, and I say, oh dear, tell you what, let me have a word with the young lady. Maybe she just needs some air.
Yes, probably needs some air. Maybe it's... I'm starting to feel a bit concerned. Maybe it is best that we have someone look at her. Is there a doctor here?
Perhaps let me go have a look and see what's going on, says Cederblom, and he also moves up to Elise to try to see what's happening. But as he moves over there, you see Wrangel stop him, and Wrangel has he's red in the face, obviously quite drunk already, and he is looking quite upset. Do you stop at that, or do you go and see what's going on with Elise, or what are you doing?
Well, he stopped the professor from going over there, and because the professor just said that he was going to check up on her, or if there was a doctor, I was going with him. And I say, Mr. Wrangel, I think the situation here is quite starting to be some grave.
You, sir, you are a clown. Doesn't know what he's doing. If you don't return my property soon, bad things will happen. Cederblom is looking at you for help, Ljung.
No, now come now, Mr. Wrangel. You have clearly been drinking too much. What is with you today?
And then Bernardsson, she also speaks to Wrangel. No, please, Rutger, let's not expose Elise to this. She's had enough stress to deal with as it is. And can you try to calm Wrangel down somehow? You could use your credit rating here, and you could try to appeal to sort of decorum and that the man is not acting up to his class.
Now, come now, Wrangel. This is not the place. And think of yourself. Think of your standing. You are already quite well invested in this, and you are quite counted as successful. I'm sure you will get to see the items again when this investigation is done. But please, act your stature. I roll 97 over 60.
Oh, well, at least that is not a fumble, but it is also not a success. So, Wrangel just seems to get even more upset at that. My stature? What are you saying, sir? No, and he again turns his attention to Cederblom, and this time he's getting even more threatening and just, you give it back to me.
I'm looking around to see if there's anyone that can help. Is there some kind of security or someone that...
No, there is Mr. Crane.
Yeah, I'm looking over towards Mr. Crane with a pleading gaze.
I move forward, smiling, almost as if nothing is going on at all, and I say to the gentleman, Come now. No need to raise our voice. Why don't we have another glass of cognac, and then, I tell you what, I'll stand in, and let's discuss this like gentlemen. Apparently, Mr. Cederblom, you owe something to this gentleman. Let's talk about it, but there's no need to cause such a fuss. Again, let's have another glass of cognac. And I'm trying to charm this individual.
Excellent.
And that is an 8 under 66.
I'm sorry, gentlemen. I think you're right. I've allowed the cognac to get to my head. Apologies. You know how it can be. Perhaps those who wanted to ban this stuff are correct after all. Although, now that you mention it, perhaps just one more. Maybe that will be enough to calm me down.
Again, this gentleman doesn't know me, so I'm capitalizing on that, being, yes. I don't believe we've been introduced, by the way. I'm Mr. Crane. It's a pleasure to meet you. Why don't you come with me? Let's chat about it. You can tell me all about it. I've been having a word with Professor Cederblom. I'm sure we can sort this all out like gentlemen.
Indeed. And you take Wrangel away, and then Cederblom and Ljung, you are able to get up to Elise, she is now hyperventilating.
Quick, we should get her some air. I try to move up to help her up, but my back is not very strong, so I look to Mr. Crane.
And Crane is away with Wrangel, and has taken Wrangel to the side, so he might not be able to help much.
Do I know anything about this? How to help someone with this?
Do you have psychology or medicine?
No, I don't really.
No. Well, Cederblom looks at you and says, you're right, we need to get a doctor. And Bernardsson nods, and you can even see Wrangel looking on worried.
Yes. What is the easiest way to get the attention of a doctor? Is it trying to get someone here, or would you get her somewhere?
Cederblom rushes upstairs to try to find someone, and you see that Wrangel, his anger has subsided, and he seems genuinely concerned for his daughter. And Fingal, you know that while Elise is Anna's and Wrangel's daughter, she doesn't really look anything like them. And that's, of course, because she's adopted. She was actually found in Kingshaven. Her parents had died, and that's where she was adopted from. She, too, is one of the treasures from this village. Put
this together in my head. It's strange almost. Maybe it's some sort of early memory that she's reacting to. I look at her and I stand there very awkwardly with an empty glass in one hand and the other on her shoulder, as if I was going to try and help her up, but I'm not very strong, and I would probably just hurt the already torn ligament on my back.
Yes, and you're all sort of standing around Elise there. She's stopped hyperventilating now. She's just kind of numb now, lying down on a sofa. And Cederblom comes back with an elderly gentleman who's got a walrus mustache. He begins examining Elise and then does just as you would expect him to and calls an ambulance. And Bernardsson, of course, tells the doctor, because you assume that he must be this man with the mustache, about Elise's history, about having been admitted to Konradsberg. But you also overhear her saying that Elise has been given a morphine derivative that makes her sluggish and makes her sleep away for days, but that she hasn't taken that recently. That perhaps it could be something related to that medicine. The doctor just nods and indicates that he's going to relay that information to the ambulance.
So she hasn't been sleep. Has she managed to sleep now without her medicine? I'm sorry for eavesdropping.
And Anna looks up to you. It was fine up until now. I don't know. She dreams. She dreams of the sea. And of going to the sea. I don't know what it means.
It's not a bad dream, going to the sea. It's or is it a nightmare?
It seems to be. I'm not quite sure. It doesn't seem pleasant. And the ambulance has now arrived. It's a discreet grey Dodge. And two gentlemen in dark suits have begun helping the almost catatonic Elise up on a stretcher to put her into the car.
I'm sipping my cognac, finding the entire thing very, very awkward. After all, I don't really know these people. I'm being polite for my good friend Mr. Young's sake, but really I'd rather be somewhere else. I do, however, once she's being taken away, I do, however, look towards Mr. Wrangel after a time to see if he's still in a conversational mood as the poor girl is finally taken away.
Yeah, so Anna joins Elise as she's being carried away, and Wrangel looks worriedly after them. And he looks to you, and I'm sorry, I'd better go.
No, of course, no, pleasure meeting you. Before you go, I lower my tone a little. What do you mean when you say the professor has stolen something from you? You don't mean the exhibition?
And he begins moving away.
I sniff my nose a little, quite irritated to have been snubbed.
And Cederblom looks at the two of you. Well, thank you for coming, I guess. I'm sad that it had to end on such a dour note.
No, I mean, it was still a very interesting night. Don't you think about that now? It was nice to see the photos and the progress that you've made, and I can't wait to see these items firsthand.
I frown a little, and I immediately snap a little, saying, "What did Mr. Rutger mean when he said that you had stolen something from him? Please, Professor, if I'm going to invest in a collection, I need to know everything."
The Minotaur, he found it, and it's been in his home since 2009.
He's the one who's been holding it all this time, you mean?
Yes. It means a great deal to him, it seems. And now it is part of this exhibition. And he is not happy about that. Not happy at all.
What about this Major Bratt, did you say? How He was very interested in the Minotaur as well. Is there a personal interest? Or?
Well, it is the centerpiece of this exhibition. There's a lot of people who are interested in it, and the story of how it came here.
Well, I could see professors and archaeologists, but military man? What interest could he possibly have? I say, a bit disdainful towards his occupation.
I don't know, but... Well, perhaps he's just interested in archaeology, he says and smiles. Well, I hope to see you next week. I hope Dr. Wrangel will be in a better mood then.
Yes, whatever you told him seems to have worked. I look at Mr. Crane with a grateful but held back smile.
Well, I hardly did anything, really. I suddenly seem rather distracted. This turn of events has clearly bothered me a little. I turned to the professor. Well, very good. It was still a pleasure meeting you today, and yes, next week I'm looking forward to actually seeing the exhibition.
Before we go, can I wonder, were the villagers ever questioned about the robbed grave, or were there any sort of investigation started into that?
The police were, of course, looking for these missing constables, and they talked to the villagers, but no one knew anything. It was strange.
Yeah, and then next week then, and will we get to see them then?
Well, next week, Dr. Wrangel will have a presentation from his side about the Minotaur, and then in 2 weeks from now, we will have the actual inauguration. We might be able to have a look at some of the items next week, if you would like. The Minotaur, for example.
Of course. Anything little that you would give us, of course.
Yes, I'm happy that you are also interested in this exhibition and the items that it contains.
Most certainly. Well, I guess that's that then. A good afternoon to you, Professor. I guess me and Mr. Young will be departing.
4 days have passed, and it's the early evening of Thursday, August the 5th. It's gotten dark, and it's raining outside. Fingal, what are you doing here in your apartment? And why is George here with you as well?
Tonight, we have been meeting up for a little dinner. I have been cooking, that I find quite fun, and it's nice to have him in the country, so I wanted to take the time for us to meet up a bit more and perhaps talk about the exhibition and what else we could have in common. I just enjoy his company and hearing news from outside of the country as well.
George, how are you liking Fingal's apartment?
It's not a bad place at all, is it? I mean, you know, it's hardly the Ritz, but at the same time there's a character to it. And besides, I'm not one to turn down a home-cooked meal, especially if there's a bit of wine on the table, which I of course brought. With a meal, it's all fine.
And what are you eating? What have you been cooking, Fingal?
Tonight I've been cooking pike. And I made it quite nice with a generous amount of butter. Yes. And yeah, my apartment is quite... it's humble. More humble than my money would afford. As is the way I dress. I prefer to keep it low-key. There's no need to brag about your successes. There are other things that are worth more than that. So I see the looks that George is giving the place, but he is polite, and I feel like we are having a good time.
Indeed, as I help myself to a sip of wine, I say, what I've been thinking about the most is what the statue could represent, though. What do you think? Like, I've been thinking of my religious texts, but, well, Greek mythology, it's mainly just stories, isn't it? Not really much concrete detail there, at least from what I've read. Have you read anything of interest in the Greek hemisphere?
I've read quite a few things, and I've studied a bit of the historical points as well, but I don't see how the Minotaur in itself is one of the most important pictures. Perhaps this particular offspring of people, maybe
There's a knock on the door.
Of sorts. Let me just take this. Please, help yourself to some more to drink, I say, and I get off my cozy armchair and start moving to the door.
And do you have one of those peepholes, or...
No, I do not.
What do? There's someone who knocks again.
What time is it?
It is early evening, so maybe around 6:30.
Not too late for a call. I say, coming, and I go up and I open the door.
And it's Anna. She's standing there. She's dripping wet from the rain, and she looks frightened.
Oh, Anna, look at you. Come in. Oh, let me get that coat. Goodness me, what are you doing out in this weather?
She's just standing there, kind of like frozen almost. You're able to get her to come inside, though.
Yes, with a little bit more physical force than I am normally comfortable with. I have to pull her in. Look at you. George, will you get a towel?
I, from the dining area, sort of just make to stand, saying, "Oh, of course, do we have company?" And I quickly rush to get a towel from his bathroom.
And she's sobbing silently against your chest, Fingal.
And I had to struggle to just get her coat off. Anna, you're shivering. You're cold. What's happened?
They've taken her. Something is terribly wrong.
Taken her? You're not making sense, Anna. Who? Do you mean Elise?
They were treating her at Konradsberg again. Everything seemed so good at first. And they wouldn't let me see her anymore.
You mustn't be taking this personally. You know, she's a very troubled individual.
She's my daughter. I can't let anything happen to her.
Well, I'm sure whatever they decide to do with her is best. They are specialists.
She's got a new doctor. It's his fault. He's taken her somewhere. They said that she agreed to the move, but they won't tell me where.
That's a bit strange, isn't it? They should at least be letting you know where she is taken.
There's something about contact with the family, risking the success of the therapy.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Anna, do you know when? I see George coming up.
I come in with the towel, looking once again quite awkward as I hand it over to Mr. Young. And
I very gently start trying to dry her hair and her... Yes, as much as I can, which is decent.
And you do that, and you notice that she's beginning to calm down a little bit, but she still seems very upset and distraught by what has happened. I want to go to the police. I want to get them to intervene. But
the police?
They've taken her.
You think that they are operating outside of what's legal?
Something's very wrong. It must be. But without any proof of it, I'm just going to end up getting committed myself.
Oh, no, don't worry about that. They would never put you somewhere. You are a stable individual.
I was in their lobby screaming at them for an hour. But they had to give my daughter back. And they wouldn't do it. I'm sure I caused quite a scene.
Oh, it's a natural reaction. I know how much she means to you. Maybe you're right. Maybe we should take this to the police. Make sure they have the legal authority to commit her like this.
Can you help me? Fingal, can you help me? Can you?
Yes, of course I will help you. Come in. Goodness me, sit down. Can I grab something to drink to calm your nerves?
Yes, something strong, please.
Oh, well, we have some things. Come, have a seat, madam. It's all going to be totally fine.
The new doctor, his name is Mild.
Dr. Mild. And have you spoken to him in person?
No, I wasn't able to get to him. If we had something to, I don't know, threaten the hospital with, maybe they would let me see her again. Maybe things would be all right then.
You are absolutely right. This is your daughter we are talking about here. I take a think to myself that first I think maybe she's just acting out of what's rational, but I've never had a child myself, and perhaps she is right. This is your daughter we are talking about. Maybe, yes, I will contact the police and we will get this straight. Don't you worry. We will talk to them and see to that this is being handled as it should be.
Well, you know, of course, now about this hospital where she has been kept, Konradsberg. It's also known as the Castle of the Fools. It was established in the middle of the 19th century, since the old asylum on Södermalm, the conditions there had gotten so inhumane that the media had taken notice, and this new one was built to offer something better. The sick here would be given the opportunity to stroll in the park and do soothing needlework. It was, yes, a very modern hospital. So you know that it is located on Kungsholmen. You remember reading about it in Dagens Nyheter, in the big newspaper that Lottie is working for. She always made sure that you had a subscription as well.
Yes, my ex-girlfriend. She told me about that. Perhaps she knows more about the things that are taking place there, and if there has been anything that has turned into a legal process before.
If anyone would know, it is the media. They do love to find dirt on just about anyone, and, she does usually work until midnight. She's probably still in the offices. The archive is there too.
Do you know what? Maybe I can talk to Lottie. I remember there was a piece about Konradsberg a few years back. Perhaps the press, pressure from the press could help and make sure that everything is turned right again.
You know, that sounds like a good idea, actually. That might just be what we need. They wouldn't want the press snooping around. They don't want scandals.
That's right. Has this been going on now since last week, or how was the situation after she was taken in?
At first, everything was great, and she was in her room at Konradsberg, and she seemed to be reacting well to the treatment. It seemed like she was getting back to normal again. And then they changed the way of treatment, and they took her away. But since yesterday, I don't know where she is now.
To change the treatment when things are going well, that sounds very strange, doesn't it, Mr. Crane?
I look a little awkward, finding the whole conversation a little out of my comfort zone. After all, I'm thinking in my mind I'm not exactly seeing anything wrong here, even if it is upsetting for this poor woman. I just nod and say, "Oh, yes, it's all very mysterious, I suppose. Have you spoken to Miss Dr. Wrangel?"
Oh, no, I don't want to get him even more upset. He's still going on about that Minotaur.
Well, he could help, couldn't he? It is her father.
Well, I don't really... This is all already very stressful. I don't need him to make it even worse. I
just sort of smile, sensing quite quickly that this isn't any of my business again, and I just nod and go, Of course. No, I'm sure Finger will be able to solve everything.
Yes. We will start looking into it. Perhaps would you like to stay here while I start looking into this?
If I could stay here and rest a bit, then yes, I think that might be good.
Of course. Mr. Crane, would you want to... I look at them both and I try to see if I feel that she is safe to leave on her own.
She seems to be all right now. She's calmed down and you've gotten her dry and made sure that she's nice and warm there where she is in the sofa where she is now.
I speak up and say, maybe if she would like to rest, I mean, it is rather late. Maybe a little nap will help you feel better. In the meantime, that can be when Mr. Ljung is making his phone calls, yes? What do you say, Miss Anna?
Oh, certainly, yes.
I was thinking of actually going into the news offices in person. There is much to be found in their archives. Perhaps it would be an interesting visit for you as well, Mr. Crane.
If you think I can be of any help, Mr. Ljung, I'm not entirely sure what you want, but I think to myself that I'd rather be going out with him than staying alone in the house with this poor, grieving woman. So I nod to myself. But maybe a bit of fresh air could do me good. Are you sure you'll be alright here on your own, Miss Anna?
She nods. Yeah, I'll be fine.
Wonderful. Well, in that case, I will accompany you, Mr. Ljung.
Sweden may be a small country, but this is still one of our largest newspapers. I thought it might be an interesting visit for you, perhaps. Maybe some interesting people for you to meet. Many of them are working late.
Maybe. All right then, well, I'll grab my coat, I guess.
And yes, you begin heading towards Dagens Nyheter, the daily news, the biggest newspaper. They also have the largest archives of articles in the city. It's between Vasagatan and Drottninggatan in the newspaper quarter, which is called Klarakvarteren in daily speech. In the same street here you have Dagens Nyheter, Svenska Dagbladet and Stockholms-Tidningen. So you have all the major newspapers in the same location, which yes, allows them to kind of keep tabs on each other. And yeah, it means that if you want to talk to the media, they're pretty much all in the same place. As you get into the building, it's filled with the sounds of journalists still banging away on typewriters and the smell of tobacco and stale coffee. And Fingal, you know where Lotti's office is. You've been here before, and as you enter, actually, the receptionist nods to you knowingly. Haven't seen you here in a while, Mr. Ljung. She's in her office.
Ah, Sarah, nice to see you as well. Yes, coming in for a visit in the evening. Thank you. I rustle my umbrella, and I put it in a stand so that I can go in, and I nod for Mr. Crane to do the same.
I do the same, remarking privately to Mr. Ljung. Well, dear boy, what exactly are we going to be looking for here? I mean, I'm all for assisting the madam, but I don't see anything wrong with the situation. It sounds to me like her poor daughter is suffering terribly, and they've simply decided on a new treatment. It's not totally unusual to allow the mother not to see the patient. I mean, it might be unpleasant for her to see what's happening.
Well, it seems to me, and I am seeing myself agreeing to what Mr. Crane is saying, though I don't really want to admit it, neither to him nor to myself. I can see that she has not been treated very well, and if there's been any similar cases before regarding the Konradsberg facility, I just thought that maybe this is the place where we would find out.
I suppose you have a point. Not entirely sure I agree with the assessment that the father shouldn't be informed. After all, he might actually have had more pull than we will. But I didn't want to press that, obviously. I say, sort of looking at him, quite hinting that obviously I don't want to interfere in their relationship.
Well, no, I am a bit... I could be more concerned there, and I'm not interested in becoming... taking his role as the father of the child. But he does seem a bit obsessed with this Minotaur.
That is unusual. Alright, well, I suppose there's no harm in, if you have the contact, asking, and maybe we can find something that will appease her a little, although I don't know. I feel she's going to be pretty disappointed if she thinks she can just blackmail the hospital into going against their own, system. But I suppose we can try.
As we go up and through the corridors and the place that I know leads the way to Lottie's office, we talk, and as we come in there, I find myself unable to resist a smile as I see my old friend, my old partner.
Yes, and Lottie's office is, as always, it's filled with piles and piles of books, folders, old newspapers, and in front of her desk is a full ashtray, and she is, as always, chain-smoking as she's banging away on the typewriter, and she looks up and sees you and has a big smile on her face. "Oh, Fingal!"
Lottie, it's nice to see you. How have you been?
Oh, she comes up to greet you with a hug. It's so good to see you again.
I embrace her as well. It's good to see you as well. Yes, how have you been as of late?
Oh, well, work keeps me busy. You haven't changed one bit, I see.
No. Well, neither have you. I've been keeping busy as well, and it's there are always things to do. It's nice to see that some things never change.
Yes, it's good that there are constants in life, and that not everything has to change. Now, I'm sure you're not just here to catch up with me at this time of night. You must be looking for something. What are you looking for, Fingal?
Yes, I was cut off as I was about to ask her, make a little bit more small talk about what she is doing, but yes, better get straight to the point. She is busy, of course.
And she's a journalist, and you know that she always knew what you wanted kind of before you had been able to articulate it, or before you maybe even knew what you wanted to ask. She's got that kind of uncanny sense.
I lean in a little bit awkwardly, and I say, it's about Anna's adoptive daughter, Elise. I'm sure you don't know too much about her, but she has been staying at the Konradsberg facility for a few years.
Oh, yes, Konradsberg. She's troubled then, I see.
Yes, she's a very troubled individual. I try not to interfere too much, but she was getting better, if I understand the situation correctly, and as she was getting better, they changed the treatment and they took her away to some sort of private facility, and the old thing seems a bit shady. They're not letting the mother know much, and I couldn't help but wonder. I remember there was an article, wasn't there, a few years back, or when was that, about the Konradsberg facility? Something else that had been going on.
Now that you mention it, I seem to remember something similar. New treatments. All right. I'll have a look in the archives and see what I can find. What am I looking for? Konradsberg, scandal, anything else?
The name Dr. Mild, who is apparently the new doctor taking care of the young, just to see that he's someone to trust and to count on.
Dr. Mild. All right, let me see what I can find. And she goes to the archives and leaves you there in her office as she is looking. Lottie comes back eventually. I've found a number of things here. First, I have a little bit on Dr. Mild that you told me about. Dr. Mild, he's 49 years old, unmarried, doesn't have children, educated in Uppsala, he's a doctor of medicine. Seems like he's had a good career, not an outstanding one necessarily. He's got an apartment on Östermalm, though, which is the very rich, posh area of Stockholm. His family was very rich. Their fortune came from mines in the Bergslagen area from the 19th century, and they were invested in a mechanical engineering industry in Stockholm right before the war. Both parents died in a sailing accident in 1917. And the family business, Milds Mechanical, was then sold. He is the only child and has inherited everything from his very rich parents.
I see. And I look down onto this article that is about the sale of death in the archipelago. I see that there's a sad sailing accident. Urban Leonore Mild died. Her son, 37 years old, Oscar Mild, he was not there. He was on another island where they were supposed to be spending some time together. He didn't see the accident. He found his father's boat adrift and no one in it. They found the dead bodies on Wednesday morning. Traces give a possible explanation that Mrs. Mild was hit by the boom and swept into the water, and Mr. Mild then was trying to rescue her and succumbed to death himself. Well, that's a sad bit of story, I suppose, and that led to his inheritance. I mean, there could be something there, but not necessarily.
No, the other article is perhaps more worrying. It's from 1923. It says that one of Mild's patients at Konradsberg was found dead in March of 1923. He hung himself in his room on Konradsberg. The patient had been depressed and the hospital has obviously bungled the supervision. The dead man's name is kept secret, but Dr. Mild is mentioned as the doctor of the deceased patient.
So you're implying there could have been a case of malpractice made against the doctor. Why wasn't it?
That is strange. It seems to have been quieted down somehow. I checked with my colleague who wrote this article, and he mentioned that the hospital was understandably trying to quiet down what had happened. He mentioned that there was a doctor who wanted to speak with him, but who had a last-minute change of heart. It was a Dr. George Wiedbeck.
George Wiedbeck.
Perhaps he might be more forthcoming now, if there's other things going on with this Dr. Mild. You have listened to an episode of Red Moon Roleplaying, where we played the Kingshaven Minotaur for Call of Cthulhu 7th edition. This adventure was written by our friends Gunilla Jonsson and Mikael Petersen for the Swedish edition of Call of Cthulhu that is published by the fantastic folks at Eloso Publishing. The music is from the Cthulhu, Nyarlathotep, Yog-Sothoth, Shub-Niggurath and Azathoth compilations by our friends at Cryochamber. Check them out at cryochamber.bandcamp.com or their YouTube channel for more game music for your table. We've also used the official soundtrack for the Swedish version of Call of Cthulhu, composed by none other than our friend Andreas Lundström from Sweden Rolls. We would like to give massive thanks to our champions of the Red Moon, Martin Heuschober, Nastasia Raulerson, Simon Cooper, David, Julia and David Hagberg for their generous support. And we would of course also like to thank all of our other patrons. Without your support, the show would not be possible. If you want to support our work, please check us out on Patreon. You can get access to bonus campaigns for Cult of Infinite Lost and Coriolis there, as well as get early and raw access to all of our recordings. You can also hear your name read on the show as a champion of the Red Moon, as well as play Cult with us. Most importantly, that support is what keeps the show going, so do check us out there. And remember, that is not dead which can eternal lie, and with strange eons, even death may die.